Welcome to People Love Process. I enjoy creating vector-based design and artwork. I love that it's a format that is resolution independent, so I can literally take a design, build it at maybe 5 inches tall, and then scale it to be 15 feet tall if I wanted to and print it out in a large format. And none of the art is degraded. That's the difference between pixel-based artwork and vector-based artwork. It's just math, and so it scales pretty much infinitely. I've seen entire buildings wrapped with vector-based artwork. It's really cool. Whenever I've been spending a lot of time creating and building vector artwork for my clients or personal projects, or in the last month, 2 courses I'm developing and the new content I tend to create for those courses, my mind kind of goes into vector building mode, if you will. And when I'm not even creating vector art, my mind analyzes whatever I'm looking at, and I start to think, how would I build that shape or pull that off if I was creating a design based off of it? And this can be anything that I'm looking at. It's like a psychosis I go into when I've been in the mode of just churning out a lot of design and vector-based work. I'll just look at shapes and I go, how would I create that shape in Illustrator? And it's all in my head. It's all going on in my head. But just to kind of demonstrate that or give you an idea of what I mean, I might see a bird like this. And I think, okay, I could illustrate that bird, but how would I deduce it down into simple shapes? Well, the way you could do it, if you look at this bird, and by the way, I should point out that photography is very forgiving. Nobody would look at this bird photo and think, that's kind of a weird bird photo. No, it's not. It's pretty normal because photography is really forgiving. What do I mean by that? Well, if I deduce it down into shapes, I can think in elliptical shapes like this. I could even grab the ellipse tool and we could build his eye here. So we'll just create an elliptical shape like that. Or if you want to use the pen tool, maybe we're going to give him a beak. So I just use the pen tool to create a little triangular shape, kind of like that. But I can analyze a photograph like this, select these two elliptical shapes, don't need the rectangle quite yet, and I'll go to Pathfinder and I can unite that. I can take this rectangular shape, and this is going to create his back. So with this being on top, I could select the two we united together, and I can go minus front. And now we have most of the bird shapes, the bird's body shape built. But here's what I mean about photographs being forgiving. This photograph, his tail is actually sticking out here. So he's more in line with his head being turned, not looking directly at the viewer. He's at a 3/4 angle of sorts. But this is his tail. But the way I interpret it through shape deduction is this is going to be his tail. And that's the difference. The photograph, nobody would question it. But if I built my design kind of like this, it might look a little odd. So that's the difference between graphic shapes and illustration proper, or photography, that is. So just something you want to consider. So once I have all these things, I could go ahead and select the head, the beak, the body shape we created, and I could go ahead and unite all those. We'll bring the eye to the front. I'll select both and I'll just punch that through, so it'll be showing through now. And what about the branch or the legs? Well, the branch and legs, these could just be strokes. So here I have a fat stroke here with round caps at the end, and a smaller stroke for both these legs. So it's easy to get volume just thinking in the different functionalities, whether it's a lot faster to build these with strokes than to try to build them with the shape like we did the body. We just have to select these, go to Object, go to Path, go to outline stroke. That turns into shapes, so you can see the individual shapes based off of those paths. Then we can unite it. Then we can take the body shape here and unite that. Now we have a magenta bird. I think one more thing that would look nice to do is let's go ahead and copy this guy. I'm going to turn on these ellipse and we'll paste behind. Let's make a blue bird. Let's see, where's our blue color? I think I'll use this color, like that. We can continue to add more detail that wasn't even in the photograph, like 2 more elliptical shapes. And we can minus front, so you get this nice kind of crescent moon. Select this, and we can go ahead and minus front, or kind of make a cutout of this. And we've created a really cool graphic just by looking at something that inspired us. And I would further go into this, and this is where I'll use the corner, dynamic corners by Astute Graphics. Not you could use the corner widget in Illustrator natively, but you have to select multiple anchors if you want to do them at the same time, or you have to select an anchor around it. This plugin, you don't need it, but I'd put a subtle round like on his beak. I go down to here, put one there, just so wherever it comes to an absolute dagger sharp point, especially on the inside here, I pull this back just so it's a little more graceful, a little more elegant and buttoned up. But this is kind of what my mind does. Oh, I could use this shape to create that, or I could round this to get that effect. That's what I'm talking about. So why am I bringing this up? Well, there was a viewer request where they're saying, can you do a tutorial about creating a vector portrait? And I said, sure, but I just wasn't sure who I wanted to do a vector portrait of. Well, over the last few years, I'll just show you a picture of him. I've been staring at this guy every Sunday. This is the pastor of the church I attend, Pastor Brett. He's awesome, has great sense of humor, which I really appreciate. But I found myself wondering, because I've been building all this vector art, and I'm staring at him, listening to him talk. And by the way, I do most of my thumbnail sketches in church because that's how I pay attention. That's a whole nother topic we could talk about sometime. But I'm looking at him and I'm going, how would I illustrate Brett? You know, his hair is white and that'd be a bit tricky to pull off. I thought, especially since his hair is white, his beard, mustache is for the most part white. I mean, there's flecks of other colors in it, but I'm going, man, that'd be tricky to do a portrait of his face. And then it hit me. I go, maybe that's what I should do. So in this movie, I want to share with you a personal project, an experimental vector portrait, if you will, and how I approached it and pulled it off. Now, the methods I'm going to be showing you can be easily adapted so you can pull off a vector portrait of anyone you want to. So let's jump into it. This is my theme, Pastor Brett, and where does it start? Well, it all starts with drawing, but I needed good reference, so I just took screen captures of some of his teaching videos on YouTube and kind of isolated different elements. You can see this part here where I did a Photoshop kind of hack job of just taking elements of one photo of his beard and putting it here. That's why there's this distinct line here. I like this one because he's staring straight at you. That's what I wanted. And I copied the right side and flipped it over to get a mirror on the left. His beard's not mirrored because these came from 2 different images, but that's okay. That's the way I'm going to build it. But I'm just trying to give myself reference that I can draw from. And so my first rough drawing, and most of the time when I'm doing rough drawing, it's like really rough. It's just almost like a gesture drawing, really crude. This case, I kind of sat down at my drawing table that I have in my studio, and I did it pretty quick, but I did what I normally don't do, and that is I had this printout on my desk, And on the top of it, using the Nina vellum paper. It's not vellum, it's just translucent stock. It's really nice. Been using it for years. If you want more information on that, just go to my website, go to People Love navigation category, and I have a list of all the products I use all the time, and Nina paper, translucent stock's one of them. It's really easy to draw on, really easy to erase. It doesn't mar the surface. And I started drawing out, okay, how would I build this out? How would I deduce it down in shapes? Looking at his nose, it has to have volume. So how would I figure out where the shading goes? Well, in this case, I figured out the darkest areas, like his glasses, the top and the pupils of his eyes, the open mouth. Those would be the darkest areas. I'd have other areas that are dark like this, but that won't be black. That'll be a darker shading value. And then I started figuring out the shading. Normally, I don't do this for the most part until later on in the process. But this one, I just kept drawing on top of my line drawing. So you can see my initial line drawing. And then I went in and started doing the shading. And I'm going, hey, I think this is going to work. So it's like one of the few times I actually drew the shading before I ever built anything to work from. So a little different than what I normally do, but it actually helped me a lot as I move forward. So this is the refined drawing. This is something I fit in between working on my own projects for clients and stuff. Did this, set it aside, came back next day, and I'm going, okay, something's bugging me about this. And I go, okay, it's the hair. He kind of has a chiseled head in terms of his hair, and it cuts into his forehead. So I just made those improvements. I like that. Again, I'll set it aside, come back to it later. And when I did, I realized, I don't really like how I handled the shading on, the bottom side of his cheeks by his nose. And so I tapered those. And I think that's going to look better. I think this gives me the structure I want to build from. So like anything, I'll select it. I'll go ahead and go to opacity, and I'm going to knock this down to about 15, maybe 20%, like that. And then I lock the layer, and it's always figuring out what's the easiest thing to create. Well, you should know by now, if you've watched any of my videos, what's the easiest thing to create? Elliptical shapes. These are the easiest. Even, in my opinion, they're easier than square shapes because they apply to more things within the context of design and illustration, I've found. So let's zoom in, because the first area I wanted to focus on was creating the inner part of his eye and the frames and the glasses. We already have these for the bridge of the glasses. Those are just two elliptical shapes. This is the little, I don't even know what they call this on glasses. The glasses I'm wearing right now have the same thing, but this little detail, it's easier just to take these and just use a corner widget just to round those off, because that's what it looks like on even the glasses I'm wearing. So the first thing we'll address this. And the way I want to build this is this shape and this shape will be fused together. But I want this shape to be separate because that'll be colored white. And it will be sitting on top of the base color. That'll be his face. So let's go ahead and grab the pen tool. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go further down than my drawing like this. And I'm just going to go like that. And this might seem a little odd, but sometimes the easiest way to build isn't to try to follow your drawing as you're building it. Just know where your endpoints come from. We can go up and grab the anchor point tool up here, grab the path, and I can pull it out to get access to these Bezier curves handles. And these are what are going to easily allow us to create kind of this arc type shape that's basically the darkest area in his face, like this. And by the way, when you're this zoomed in, sometimes don't use too thick of a line. So I think, yeah, this 0.5 Might be easier to see what we're doing if we're using a hairline like that. So don't be afraid to do that because it just makes vector building a lot easier. So we're going to terminate this. So this will determine the underside of the eye. And this is just going to be what I call a throwaway shape. Grab the anchor point tool again. I'll adjust this. So this will be the bottom edge of the eye, like that. I'm going to make a copy of this inner part of the eye. Command C, Command F. I just hit the F3 key for keyboard shortcuts, and it creates a duplicate, a clone, if you will. We'll use another throwaway shape because one of these copies I want to trim off the top because I don't want it popping up above. So we'll go minus front, and I'll take this shape and I will fuse these two together like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and actually I'm going to undo that. First thing I'm going to do is select these two shapes and I'm going to clone them. Command C, Command F, then fuse them. And then I'm going to go to compound, release. You might have to ungroup it, delete the outermost shape. So I did that just to create this. Okay. Now I'm going to take the shape of the inner eye, this arch shape. Make sure we select the right thing, this arch shape. We'll go ahead and fuse those together. I'll bring this on top, and then I'll trim those. So now all of those align here. And I left this copy just so we can reduce it and make the little highlight shape, something like that. We might adjust that as we go forward. So this shape is sitting on top of what will be the white shape. This will be black. Eventually, this will be white sitting on top of this shape. Then this shape will be sitting on top of this shape, which will be white. So that's how I kind of structure it. Let's go ahead and build the frames here. Now, this isn't a circular shape, but if you think like a circular shape, we can just, I'm always, instead of always going back to here and recreating, if I'm this close to elliptical shape, why would I go all the way up here, click this, then go back and start building the shape? Why not just grab this one, go just copy it and paste it, and then I can start by position it. I want it at the top where you have a 12 o'clock position. I can distort this down so it goes to the bottom inside of the glasses here. And then I can pull this one over here like this. And on this one, I don't want it to go directly over here. I want this one to go positionally like right up here. I'll probably pull this down. And then on this one, I want this one to go right about there, like that. And then all I need to do is adjust the Bezier curve. So I can use this to pull out to get that angle as it goes into the bridge of the glasses here. I might nudge this up just a little. And then on this one down at the bottom, I might pull this one up and then use this one to get that angling here. And if you ever think you need to, just slide it over if it needs to correct the position. You won't always nail those the first time. And then on this one, I'll bring that one up and I'll use this to create most of that angling in there. And then on this one, again, I'm going to use mostly this handle to create that angle, bring it over like that. And then you can finesse this. This might be up a little far, so let's nudge that down like that. Then I'll drag that over. I think that looks a little better, like that. And then if I'm building the frames themselves, If I'm using nothing but native tools in Adobe Illustrator, just think if this is a corner, goes arches all the way over, it's going to go into here. So I'll put my end anchor somewhere around here, go over here to where I think the corner of this part of the frame will be, like that. And I'll put one there, and then this one I'll end right there. And then we need to create this curve here. So all I'm going to do is go right to the base here where I have this anchor on the inside, and I'm going to create this curve by first snapping it to that anchor. Then I'll drag it down because I want these to be associated with the same positioning. It's going to make creating the curve easier. Then I can continue. And by the way, if you're continuing like this, it's easy. You just click on this, pull it out, hold the shift key down, and you can continue like you never stopped. And then this is going to go up here and just close this shape. So this is a rough build. Then you can go to anchor point tool, grab this like we did on the inner part, and then adjust the Bezier curve handles to get the exact angling you want. That said, that's the native way to do it. I don't tend to do that most often because I love using Astute Graphics plugins, and specifically their Path Scribe tool, part of Vector Scribe plugin, because it gives me these white nodes on the path. These are ghost handles, so I don't have to adjust the path. I can just grab this, pull it out, and it gives me immediate access to the Bezier curve handle. Then I can just, again, just adjust these to get those angling over on this one. I'd want to create most of this angle based off of the handle coming out of this anchor point here. So this one I'm going to kind of drag over like that, and then we can use the ghost handle to pull out this one. And you can see how far I'm pulling that, but it looks good because it looks like that angle you get on the glasses. This one might need a little more, so I'm going to pull this out a little more, kind of like that. Another plugin that I love is called the Arc tool by Astute Graphics. It's part of Subscribe, actually. I think this one, maybe nudge it down. Okay, that's too far. So what I usually do in this case, I'll pull it away, then move it up until I think the positioning looks better. And I think that positioning looks better. Might move this over just a little like that. The Arc tool is really great. This one right here, part of Subscribe, because I don't want these to be perfectly straight on the arms of the glasses. So I'll go like this to create those subtle, non-perfect lines. And then I switch back to the pen tool, and I can close this shape. So once we have that, I can select the frame, select the arm, and go unite. Like here, I can select this, bring it to the front, select this one. And we'll go minus front. We've created a weird donut shape now. So what I can do is start here. Oops. I'm going to snap to the guide here. I'm creating a shape for no other reason than to get the end shape I want, like that. I'll select the donut, weird oval donut, and I'll go intersect. So wherever the two objects overlap, they create a new shape. Like that. Then I can select my frames and unite that with the frames. Then all it comes down now is you can use the corner widget to do this. I think just adding a nice little curve, maybe a little wider, something like that would be fine. And then here we want to put a little curve here just so it's not a squarish kind of corner. And a subtle curve here. We'll go over here. We want to curve this so it blends in really well. Something like that. And you even might want to put a curve on this. I think I'm going to leave that as is, but that's how I'd create the glasses. In the inner part of the eye, It's probably I always start with the shape that intrigues me the most, or it's the easiest shape. So elliptical shapes, and then the glasses. Now, when it's all cleaned up, these were all the elements of the eye. So all of these are ready to reflect over to the other side. So I don't have to build anything over here because this is a symmetric kind of process to do this kind of portrait. That's why I'm doing it symmetrically. It's just a lot faster and easier. But I focus on areas one at a time. So I have the eyes, and I'll leave those on as I'm creating other ones. Sometimes I'll turn it off. This case, I'll zoom in here. Again, elliptical shape. These were just created with the pen tool and adjusting the Bezier curves to get all the curves. But in order to make this, as the viewer looks at it, you want the nostril shape to be reinforced by these shapes, because we won't actually have a shape that's like this. So we're using an oval in this case to select these two and go minus front. So now it's going to visually read. So even if we didn't have this oval, looked like I had a copy there, you can see you get that curve of the nostril. So that's why I did this. Other times when I build, I want precision in terms of the specifics of the shape. I don't want to freeform it because then I'm not sure if it's going to match exactly. So I'll create one curve of this part that'll end up being part of the nose shape. All I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of this, and I'll go to the pen tool, and we'll just create a shape like that. With this shape selected, I'll go to Object, I'll go to Path. I use Offset all the time. It's a great feature. In Offset, you can go minus. It'll do an inset. Even though it's called Offset, to do an inset, use Offset. You just punch in a negative number. Kind of confusing, but just think a negative number, and it reverses directions. It goes to the inside. We don't want that. I think this one I want about 7. In a positive. We can test it. That looks good. I'll click OK. So you can see it's created this offset. Now I don't want to keep all of this. I just want to keep the parts I need to keep. So I'm going to cut here with the scissor tool, cut here. I can select everything else, delete it, take the throwaway shape I used, delete that, and now all I have to do in this case is I'm just going to close this path. So I'll go like this, connect it here. Then I'm going to switch tools, and this is where I'll go back to that arc tool, because I don't want this to be a straight line that just goes across. I want it to have an ever so subtle curve. And actually, this is where it might help to zoom in a bit. So let's go ahead and create that subtle curve. Starting here, I'll go over here, and then again, it's a subtle curve. And then to resolve this, I'll just close it, kind of like that. And then if you go unite, it'll kind of encompass itself. And then this is where I'd select this area, and then I'd put a nice curve just so it goes in to the bottom and flows really nicely. So that's how I use all of those features. It's not about just using the pen tool and just kind of trying to create everything from scratch. Take advantage of build methods like Offset. Offset it's one of the functionalities. I wouldn't call it a tool. It's just a function that I use like every day, all day long, all the time. I like all the time. It's nuts how much I use it. So let's go ahead and jump to the beard. And this is where I focused on creating one side, but I've reflected it over because I'm going to use the exact same on the other side. We have other elements we need to reflect over. And you might be going, well, is this a halo you're putting on top of Brett's head? No, actually, this is something over the years when I did symmetric stuff. This design isn't hard to find a central anchor point. So a central anchor point, if I select the frames, this would be a central anchor point. But sometimes the more complex a design gets, it's easier just to position something here, which is aligned with our symmetry. And that way I can select an anchor point on this. So this is where I'd select everything regarding the glasses and the eyes, all the detail that make up the nose elements, all the detail that make up the ear on this side. All of these need to be reflected. So I'd copy it, Command-C, Command-F, or in my case, I just hit F3, which creates a copy. I'll go to the Reflect tool, find a central anchor point. I could do it here, or usually I go up here and just reflect it over like that. So reflection is a good feature, especially it's really needed. And by the way, you can see in my drawing didn't align up, even though I was thinking this way when I drew it. I was a little off. So again, always perfect your design as you're creating it. If you see a better way to handle it, then by all means do that. And then here's the rest of the hair shape. And of course, the mouth elements. So as I turn on the mouth, I want to zoom in because you might be going, well, what's this shape here? Well, if I move it, it's a shape like this. But I have this will be the background that makes up the base color of his face. This will be black, the inside of the mouth. So what is this? Well, that's going to be a shading shape because it's right under where his mustache is, and that's one of the darkest areas. So the easy, oops, didn't mean to delete that. So what we want to do is we want to take this base shape here, and I'm going to copy it, Command-C, Command-F, select this, and we're going to go intersect. So wherever it overlaps, we'll create our final shape. And this is the actual shape I'll color. So I always kind of build stuff like this on their own layers to figure everything out, make sure it's all working. And then ultimately, we get to the base vector artwork is showing here. We can turn off our sketch now. We don't need that. And so these are all the base vector shapes. And it's at this point that I want to figure out how am I gonna do the base coloring on this. And that's what we want to do now. So I'm going to turn on my tonal family. And even though Adobe didn't seem, by the way, I had my meeting with an Adobe engineer, and he tried to explain why they did what they did with the color info swatch, which, by the way, if you go to the swatches panel, they're talking about the, now where is it? Now I'm not, this one, create swatch info. You select your swatches and your swatches palette, go here. This will be lit up and it'll create a legend. It's been around for 4 or 5 years already. It has a script, which I like better than their built-in feature now. And that was their answer to drag and drop swatches to the desktop. And basically, they interviewed 12 people, 8 of them, when they mentioned to them, what would you think of this swatch thing? Oh, that'd be cool. They decided to do that, then make a new feature. Okay, I'm getting a little off topic here, but I want to tell you because I took the time to explain it to one of their team members. I go, think of it like Apple does. Apple comes out with a feature. Do they show every possible way you could use that feature? No, they just demonstrate something, and then they usually say, we look forward to seeing what you do with this, because they know their audience will think of all these other ways they can utilize that feature. And I go, that's what you guys are missing. If you would have made it so I could grab a swatch, drag it to the desktop, and tile it like this, turn off those dividers so I can see things together, make it so I could select maybe the elements in his face and click on this and it would fill it just like if I clicked on a swatch, you don't think people would figure out a way they could use that or save it in their workspace or anything? You think it's not as useful? That's way more useful than just being able to select a few swatches, go here, and create a color swatch that just lists what the color breaks are for those colors. Anyway, had the discussion, didn't agree with their logic. They said, well, we interviewed 12 people, and 8 of them said they'd really like to see this swatch info. So 8 people overrided over 500 people that thought my idea would have been really cool. So what are you going to do? I don't control the ship. I don't run Adobe. They make their own decisions. So let's go ahead and color our artwork here. I'm going to select all the elements that I definitely want black. So his glasses, inside pupils of his eyes, all these will be black. Looks like I don't have these layered the way I probably should have done. So let's go ahead and... Actually, I'm just going to undo that. I'm going to take all these elements here in the eyes, like that. We'll bring those to the front. Actually, let's select these two, bring these to the front. Okay. Then we'll take his eyes. We'll take his glasses. Glasses. Actually, you know what? Instead of coloring his glasses first, let's just color his face. Like this, color his face. And select those elements. And not that one. Paste behind. There we go. And now we can start isolating the areas that will be the darkest colors, like this. And his eyes. These will be black. Let's go ahead and put those behind these, like that. And then those areas of white on these shapes, I'll do that. His hair is going to be white, but I'm putting a outline around it. Like this. I'll copy it. I'll select all these facial shapes. Like that. Paste behind. Like that. His ears. We'll color those. Boy, I got all this. I should have set up all this so it's going a little smoother. That's okay. I usually do it just so it's a more streamlined process in videos and stuff. And oops, I accidentally had that selected. That doesn't work good. Hey, what happened to his eye? Oh, there's the highlight. We'll bring that to the front. Command Y. Uh-oh. Let's color that white. And paste it behind the highlight. There we go. His eyebrows, same thing. Those will be white. But all these areas that are the... Actually, let's color his teeth. Those will be white as well. This will be shading value here. And all these areas, whether it's under his mustache, under his nose, the creases under his cheeks, these little shadows, these are the areas where it recesses back and it's going to be a darker value. So we'll take those and all these, I'm going to color it this color. Oops, looks like he has a bloodshot eye. Let's go ahead and fix that. There we go. And these, we're just going to make those white like that. And on his ears. Okay, so here is the base color for his face. If I go to color here, you can see it's 0, 23, 33, 4. Now we want to make a shading value. That means I'll cut these values in half. And if I select this, you can see that's what I've done. So 22 went to 12. Now I can't remember the values. 23 went to 12 and 33 went to 16. Then I added 10 to it. And this gives us a value for shading. You might think, well, that kind of looks bad. But once you apply multiply, it interacts with the base value and you get this nice shading hue. And so this is where I want to use that just initially here. And so we'll go ahead and color it that same value that we just created, like this. And then these areas here will be this initial dark shading we put here, like this. And so this was when I first started colorizing the artwork. I'm going, okay, I think this is going to work. Now, it's at this point that I'll create a black and white like this, because all I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and print this out and then determine what the shading is. And I start with the black and white like this, but ultimately what I end up with, oh, we still have his head turned on. Let's turn that off. If I go up here, I create what I call a drawing template because I need to draw out all the detail. So this shows how I'm defining all the shapes. And now I want to figure out, and by the way, this is in correspondence with our initial rough drawing. I'm actually looking at this, but I'm going to be drawing on my drawing template that I created here. Now, one thing I wanted to point out in this is that notice how I made this inset of the frame itself, the lens of the frame. So if I go like this and I go to object and I go to path and I go offset, I want to inset this, not 7, that goes to the outside. We're going to inset this, maybe 7 would work. We'll go, nope, this has to be, I believe it was 5, like this. And that's it. So we inset at 5. We can get rid of this. And the reason why I did this is I want to draw out my shading so it leaves this rim of the base color around it. And it kind of gives the idea of the lens effect on the visual image. So this was my drawing template. And then I literally print it out. And then I start drawing on top of it. So here's the drawing. Once again, I reference my original rough sketch. And once I have this, I'll go ahead and select my drawing template. I'll turn on the base colors we've figured out here, and I'll multiply my drawing like this. And then I usually set the value at about 40%, just so it's dark enough that I can see it. I'll lock it, and then I use the same principles to build the original base artwork, but this is just to work out all the shading and highlight areas that I plan on doing, whether it's the detail in the beard and the hair, which is going to be colored the same color that we have here under his lip. And once I get this worked out, I'll reflect those areas because it's symmetric. So I'm only building one side, and I'm going to reflect it over to the next side until I get nice, clean shapes. And this is now where we can start applying this detailing. So I'm going to turn this on. We'll turn these off and turn back on our tonal family here. And you can see we have some of the colors applied here. If I go over here, we'll apply the shading to the forehead. We'll apply the shading underneath here like that. We'll take the shading that's going to be on his beard. It'll be the same color we have going on here. And I think this is looking really good at this point. But after I get to the next step, I'm looking at this and I did notice something. The next step is highlights. Now, highlights are the easiest. If you're using global colors, and so this is the base color here. If I go ahead and double click into this, notice it's a global color. If a swatch is a global swatch color, it means you can set the tint of this. So if I click on this and go to the color panel, notice this is 60% tint, that's what T stands for, of that base color. So if I bring this all the way back, it's just the base color, but you can go in here and set the tint. In terms of this type of illustration, it's easier, I think, doing this than making it white and then adjusting it. You could do it that way, but I find this actually looks a little better. But if it's a hot spot, this is white. It's now a perfect oval. I've distorted it, by the way. And this is how I detail all of these. And I thought this was looking good. There's one thing that I think we still need to do to improve it, and that is I didn't like it getting to the edge. And I had this little outline here, but if I go and turn this off, because I didn't intend that to stay there, I'm going, well, it's like he's emerging from a sheet of paper. This was part of that thing in my head when I was staring at him every week going, how would I pull that off? And I got to that point in this and I go, yeah, I need to do something about that. So I cloned the shape that makes up his hair and his beard shape, but I'm going to fill it with this color, and then I'm going to do an outline on that, and we'll go to strokes because I want this to be rounded, and I don't want it to be one. It needs to be thicker because I want this to stick out. So I'm going to do 14, and then I'm just going to copy it. I'll go ahead and select all of our artwork. Make sure we have all of it selected like this, not the swatch. And I'll go Command. Well, that didn't work. Let's try that again. Make sure we're on the right layer. Oh, that would help, on the right layer. And go Command B. And that's odd. Okay, let's just turn off this layer and just go to this layer and go Command B, so it puts it behind. And as soon as I did this, I go, okay, I need to also do this for the ears. So I'm going to take the ear shapes, make a copy of them. On the ear shapes, let's go back to our tonal family here. I'm just going to go ahead and fill these with this color, and I'll use the same tolerances, strokes, and on these, I'll color it the same stroke, but I'll make the same tolerance of 14. We'll turn on round corners. And now, again, I will copy. I'll take this and I'll go paste behind like that. But I actually want the gray one to be behind the ears. So let's go ahead and select that ear. So we have the ears selected, and you can determine by the color, and I'll go Command B. I just want that to come in front like that. And as soon as I did this, I go, that looks good. But then the more I'm looking at this, I'm going, it's kind of optical illusion. If I select this and we go here to the swatches, I go to the color, you can see it's our shading value here. It's this one right here. And it's multiplied, and it's 100%, so it's not a tint of that color. It's multiplied. It's using this setting, and it looks good here. Looks good on the ear as well. But then you go into the inside here. If I click this, it's the exact same color, but it's looking like it's lighter than in here. That's because we have a lot of darks around it. And so this is where I realize I need to create another shading value that just goes a little darker, a deep shadow, if you will. So again, I'll show you how you do this. If I go into the base color here in the color panel, click on this to get to the base values. And here, I'm just going to knock these down again. This one, I'm going to go to 15. I think last time I used 12. I think this was 15 or so. We'll just leave it right around 16. And we had 10 for this. I'm going to go twice as much to 20, like that. now that I have that, I'll go back to the swatches. We want to add this as a new swatch, so I'll drag it in here, double click into it, set it for global, click OK. So now this is a global swatch. If I go to the transparency palette, go to multiply, you see it has a little darker value. So if I select these inside parts of the eye and I color it this new shadow color, I think this just looks a lot better because it would be darker in that area, much like what we had in the photo reference. So the final art on this, actually, one thing I forgot is the highlights. So again, this is what the highlights look like. And then as I always set stuff aside because I'm not sure how to approach it. And it was at this point, I'm going, it needs something a little more. And I'm going to zoom in here because what I did is I'm going to turn on this. It's rim highlights. I decided the lenses needed a little reflective highlight, whether it's on the frame or this bottom side, it's like hitting the bottom of the lens and there's a highlight there. But then I thought, if I remove this, this wasn't bad, but as soon as I put that in, I go, oh, that looks good. So I want that on both sides since this is symmetric. So I go to a central anchor point and reflect it over. And those are the little things that I always try to give myself time to set something aside, come back to it later, and you always notice that. So I just wanted to make sure to cover that. But I like how the final came out. It was a lot of fun. Maybe a big on-screen graphic they could bring up one Sunday would be something like this. I don't think they'd ever go for that. But I did create stickers, and I sent it to some friends of mine at the church. They thought it was pretty funny, like this. So every year, our church hosts an event called Athey Days. It's Athey Creek is the name of the church, by the way, where artists, craftsmen of all types, by the way, pottery, there's a guy that creates these custom axes and swords that are really cool. And other creators have booths, and it usually takes place on a Friday and a Saturday. And they share and sell their work, which is cool. And this year, I'm thinking about doing a sticker booth. And if anyone buys 2 or more of those stickers, I'm going to give them a free Pastor Brett head sticker as well. By the way, I'm going to put a big kind of signage thing where the pastor is proclaiming how cool the stickers are, of course. That would be funny. I hope you enjoyed this content, and as always, you can access the exercise files in the link in the movie's description below. If you like this movie, give it a like, and if you have a question, just post it in the comments below, because this whole movie came about because somebody asked me if I'd do something regarding a vector portrait. And once again, the principles I showed in this, you can take any vector portrait, and if you focus on it being symmetric, it's a whole lot easier, but you can use these principles whether it's symmetric or not symmetric. But give it a shot. Think of somebody that you would like to do a portrait of and see how you can pull it off. Thank you for those who have subscribed or become members. You actively help me to invest the time necessary to create new content, and I appreciate it. Now, I'm recording this on a Saturday. Every Saturday, I take my own free spare time and I create content for my YouTube channel, just so you guys can improve your skills, learn, and grow. So until next time, thank you for watching People of Process. And as always, I hope this content helps you to improve your own creative process.